Well, hello everyone. This is instructional course number 50, and my name is Dave Brienza, and it's my pleasure to introduce Antoinette Verdone. She will present today during this session on Smart Home Makeover Disability Edition, and this is the part of our RESNA track for ISS. So Antoinette, I will turn the stage over to you, and I'll just before I go on mute, I'll tell everybody that I will give out the CEU code at the end. Antoinette will pause a couple times during the presentation to take some questions, but we'll also have some question and answer time at the conclusion. So Antoinette, take it away.
Thank you. So excited to present to you guys. I was really looking forward to attending ISS. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I've never been to the conference, but COVID had other plans, so this is how we're doing it this year. But hopefully next time it comes around in the US, I will be there in person. So excited for that. So thank you so much for attending my session. So just a little bit of background about myself. My name is Antoinette Verdone. I'm an engineer by trade. I have been in the industry for over 20 years. Can't believe I can say that, but it is actually true. My undergraduate degree is in mechanical engineering from the University of New Orleans, and I got my graduate degree in biomedical engineering from Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio. My first job out of college, I worked for a state rehab program in Mississippi. Then I worked for the ALS Association in New York City. And we were just talking before we started here that I'm a lightweight when it comes to the weather. So I say 4 years is my limit. I stayed there 5.5 years because I like my job so much. But then in 2011, I moved to Austin, Texas and started private practice. So, I've kind of worked in a lot of different avenues and, private, nonprofit and state government. And I've been saying this for 20 years and literally it's more and more true every day. If you can think it, it's out there. So I kind of have a disease where if you give me a problem, I have to find a solution to it. So assistive technology is a perfect fit for me. Improvability, I own Improvability. We are a for-profit business. We do resell the items that we're going to talk about. They are mostly, I think, if not all, commercially available items. So I don't, we're not exclusively dealers of these things, but that is my disclosures. So I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but I do think it's important just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page here. Assistive technology is a device or strategy that fills the gap between the user's ability and tests to be accomplished. So the job of the assistive technologist is to match the technology to the person, taking into consideration the goals and environment that the technology will be used. So for all of y'all that are ATPs, the HAT model should not be new to you. I have a representation there, but I think with when we talk about home automation, the context is probably more important than maybe in other applications. So where and how this stuff is going to be used is really important. Again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. So when we talk about home automation, there's many different professionals that could be involved in this. I'm sure most of y'all are aware of the assistive technology professional credential certification that is administered by RESNA. It is a certification, it's not a license. So I just like to say that if you are looking for someone to help with home automation, specifically for people with disabilities, in a perfect world, they would have that ATP certification. I feel like it really is important for people who are providing solutions for professionals. If you're a physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, you have that medical license kind of behind you. But for vendors who maybe don't have a medical background, the ATP just shows that they understand disability and technology and are part of the industry. So what is home automation? So people use all different kinds of terms, so I'm kind of lumping all these things together. Home automation, smart home, environmental control. ECU is kind of an old term. I still do use it. You do hear it a lot. which really stands for Environmental Control Unit, meaning a product, but people will say ECU when they're talking about someone who needs access to their environment. Kind of a newer term is EADLs, Electronic Aids for Daily Living. That's kind of more like medical model language, but I kind of use all these terms interchangeably. I've kind of started to use environmental control because I feel like that's probably the most descriptive and targeted term. For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to be talking about devices and strategies for people with disabilities to control items in their environment. Excuse me. And we're going to focus on handyman level type stuff. I'm not going to really talk about door openers and more complicated items, but if people have questions, I'm happy to answer those. Disclaimer, this whole world is quickly changing. Literally every hour there's something new. Pretty much this presentation is already out of date. I actually had done a very similar presentation to another entity, and it took me 2 to 3 hours just to update everything because things change so fast. And we are mostly going to be talking about consumer level equipment. So just to know that this information can change at any time and without warning. So I'm doing the best with what I know, but if you go research, you may find something has changed or something may be different. And my focus is really I want this to be a presentation where you can take away this information and actually use it instead of just giving you a bunch of products and stuff. So I'm really trying to keep this entry level in a sense, but as you're going to see, things do get complicated quite quickly, especially when we have the added constraint of a disability. Then those are additional things we have to take into consideration. So I'm really trying to keep it simple, but it gets complicated fast. So again, just as to get us all on the same page, I don't know what everybody's experience is with home automation. I want to make sure we really understand this terminology because it's super important. So these are all the different kind of protocols that can be used in home automation. So IR is infrared, and that is kind of what you're used to as far as a TV remote. We're actually seeing TV remotes are moving away from infrared, but that's where you have to be in the same room and you have to point the device at the thing you're controlling. So we say that requires line of sight. So for most people, for your television, if you push the power button, if you go into your bedroom and push the power button and try to operate the TV in your living room, it's not going to work. You have to be in the same room and point it at the actual television. Radio frequency, RF, there's many, pretty much the rest of these are all radio frequency protocols, but kind of another example would be your garage door opener. So you could be 2 houses down, hit your garage door opener, and it doesn't need that line of sight. The signal gets sent over the airwaves and it operates your garage door. Wi-Fi and internet. So because I'm a curious person, I had Googled one day, what does Wi-Fi stand for? It actually doesn't stand for anything, but I think what has happened is people conflate Wi-Fi and internet. So Wi-Fi is a wireless protocol, and there are actually a number of different protocols inside of what we call Wi-Fi. But that is just a pipe. So I know I'm aging myself, but way back in the day, we had Wi-Fi printers before there was wireless internet. So you would create a Wi-Fi network that was just a pipe, and you could send your print job to a printer wirelessly if you could figure out how to do it. So just because you have a Wi-Fi network does not necessarily mean that you have internet going through that pipe. So the internet is the actual information that's going through the internet, and most of the time nowadays we are using that via Wi-Fi. You can also be plugged in through an Ethernet cable to get internet to a device. Zigbee is a wireless protocol that you didn't really hear a lot about 4 or 5 years ago, but it's really becoming one of the big standards that you see a lot. And there's a lot more products out, even just in the last couple of years. That's probably mainly due to Amazon adding Zigbee hubs to some of their devices. Z-Wave's been around a long time, 70s, 80s. It's been a long 1970s, 1980s. It's been around for a long time. It's another radio frequency protocol that is used in home automation. Bluetooth is sometimes used in home automation. Most of us are familiar with that with our Bluetooth headsets for our phones. So the biggest thing with Bluetooth is that it has a relatively short range, 30 to 50 feet. So you're not gonna have a Bluetooth signal that's gonna reach the whole home. Insteon is a proprietary protocol from a specific company. It was popular about 8-9 years ago, but because it's proprietary to that one manufacturer, it's not quite as popular, but I personally have Insteon items and they still work. X10 is a super old radio frequency protocol that actually uses radio frequency along with sends signals through your house wiring. So that was my kind of gateway drug into home automation, was a couple X10 modules I bought when I was in graduate school because people were saying this word and I didn't know what it was. So I just bought some stuff and started playing around with it. So it's still out there and it still does work. So now that we kind of have a basic understanding of what these different protocols are, the main thing is that when you're looking at products, and we're going to get into this a little bit more in detail, but you need to know what the protocol is to verify that whatever equipment you're using can communicate in that protocol. And a lot of companies, I find their websites very frustrating because they're very whiz bang and they show videos and stuff, but they never tell you what protocol they're using. So you have no idea if it's going to work with the equipment that you have. Now, something that's really exciting, that's literally, this is happening right now, is a new home automation standard called Matter. And if you're teching, you want to get into this, I have the link here to the actual standard website. The consortium kind of started in 2019, and you're just now seeing the first commercial products come out. Some equipment will be able to be backwards compatible. I think most of the time it will require a firmware update, but this is the future. This is where things are going. So definitely keep this word in the back of your brain. In the next year or two, you really would want to purchase things that use this Matter protocol so that you know that they will be compatible, because that's the whole idea here, is we want to have a standard so that equipment can work across platforms. So let's kind of, I know I'm probably aging myself by using this picture, but we're going to use the Wayback Machine and we're going to go back in time to the old age of 2015, which in technology land is a long time ago. I would say 2015 was, I actually went back in my records, and 2015 was the year that I did my last dedicated environmental control system. So before 2015, these were our options in the disability world. And some of these products are actually still on the market. And I'm not going to say that there's never an application for them, but their purposefulness in the market is decreasing. I know for sure the Pilot, which is the picture in the top right, and the Primo, which is that blue screen touch device, those are commercially not available anymore. The Quartet is still commercially available. I don't know about the Sage. I think it is. Their website's still there. So these were dedicated devices. Some of them had voice control. It was where you had to pre-program your voice. I'm not mad at these devices. Some of these devices have been around since the 80s. And they gave people with disabilities access to their environment because there was no other option. We're not mad at these products, but the main obstacle is that they are very expensive. Just the box itself, these products range from $2,000 all the way up to $8,000 to $10,000 just for the control system. And then you have to add your modules and programming and all that stuff. So the systems were very, very expensive. The only alternative you had to these devices up until 2015 was things like Control4 and Crestron. Those are just two companies that made customized home automation, but these were things you saw in like $1 million homes for very wealthy people because they were very expensive. Some of these companies now offer some more consumer level equipment, but this was like a $40,000 system for a $3 million home. So that's kind of where we were. And then in November 2014, the Alexa was released. And I remember when it was first released, there was the main focus was on playing music. So didn't really pay attention to it. I'm like, okay, a fancy speaker, that's nice, isn't it? And then, as time went on, people started talking more and more about it. And also I kind of was poo-pooing that there could be a very good speaker independent voice recognition system. I kind of didn't think that was possible. So I waited a little while, and then you just started hearing about it so much on different podcasts, and then people talking about how people with disabilities could use it. And then when the home automation stuff started coming out, I was like, okay, this is something I really need to learn more about. And it really kind of changed the paradigm when it comes to home automation for people with disabilities. So with the advent of Alexa, there has been this explosion. There was already a lot of home automation stuff happening, but Alexa really brought it to the forefront. So this is, again, some of these products aren't even commercially available now, but the point is there really has been this explosion. So I would say, 2015 to like 2018, it was kind of this wild west where so many people were developing products, but you didn't know who was going to be around for a while. So you had to be really careful not to just jump on the bandwagon of the most new product, because especially for me, I'm providing this equipment to clients. If I provide them a product and then, a year later it breaks and the company doesn't exist anymore, that's not okay. So now that we have some history, we kind of know the players and the companies that are going to be around for a while. And then also kind of around the same time, you have this ubiquity of mobile devices, whether someone has their own device or, whether they're using their cell phone, or if they have an extra tablet hanging around, that could be their control system. And voice access is now widely available, and it is very accurate. I'm sure all of us could tell stories about things that I've been pleasantly surprised how well these devices pick up your voice and understand you. I mean, for someone who's been in the industry for a long time, it really is amazing how good the technology is. So this is kind of where we've landed. So this is where we are in 2022. We basically have three main players when it comes to home automation: Alexa, the Google Home, and HomeKit. There's pros and cons to all three of these systems. What I would say is Alexa really is now, right now, they are superior with regards to home automation. They have a lot of products that are compatible with it, and they seem to focus more on home automation than Google Home. Google Home seems to be a little bit more geared towards more of a conversational device where you can ask it questions and stuff like that. HomeKit is made by Apple, and it's still a little premature. There's some things happening, especially with this Matter protocol. They are going to be part of that. So it may be that you could incorporate HomeKit devices into a system that you couldn't before. They do have some security options that are a little bit more robust than some other products. So if security is really important to you, HomeKit may be something to look at. But for this presentation, we're really going to focus on Alexa because that's the product that we work with most of the time and has the most options. So what I would say one of the biggest benefits of using consumer equipment for people with disabilities for environmental control is that you can add things in stages. So, back in the day with those boxes, we had to program everything that the person wanted to control. We had to program it all at once. And if you got a new TV, good luck. We had to start all over and redo it. We do not live in that world anymore. So the nice thing is, and I kind of realized this as I started doing these consumer setups for my clients, they were getting a bunch of equipment all at once, and it can be kind of overwhelming because you have to learn the commands and all that stuff. But for someone, especially for someone who's self-funding, because I was thinking about myself, I'm like, why was it not hard for me to learn this stuff? Well, it's because I didn't get it all at once. I got a thermostat. That was kind of my gateway drug to Alexa home automation. And then I added some light switches. I added this, I added that. So, over, the course of a couple years, I've kind of settled into what I have now, but I didn't get it all at once. So that's kind of a nice thing for two reasons. One, cognitively just a lot to take in and to learn, but also money wise, we can set up kind of a base system, and then you want to add a light switch down the road, you want to add a TV, you want to add another thermostat, you can do these things as you have the funds to do that. So just to kind of give y'all an example, I think sometimes people think that, and we do very large environmental control setups, but my setup is actually pretty large compared to what most people, when we go through our evaluation process, what they need. So I thought this would be a good talking point just to show. So I, in my own home, have 14 light switches, 3 outlets, 2 motion detectors, you can read the list. And then for the TV, I just use the voice control to turn on and off my system, and then I use the handheld remote. But like I said, that would actually be a pretty large setup from what we do. So if you're looking at helping someone with a disability to set up home automation, you really want to start with the end in mind. The most important question is to ask the user what equipment they need control over in a thoughtful way. Because obviously, if you ask someone, do you want control over this? The answer is going to be yes. So some of this is, everyone lives in their homes differently. So finding out what is important to them, what things they need to have control over. For a lot of our clients, kind of their top priorities are getting in and out the house or seeing someone at the door. So, some of that is getting to know them and figuring out what the priorities are. Also, what their access method is going to be is very important. Some clients really want to do everything with their voice. Other people are cool using mobile device. And then if you're working with someone who has a progressive disability, you want to make sure that whatever equipment you recommend, that will be able to be controlled by them as their disease progresses. And then also another factor is how much access does a caregiver need? So that's something else to take into consideration. And ease of use is very different from ease of setup. So yes, the technology has gotten much more user-friendly, but I will say that even now, even a couple light switches, if you're not a tech-savvy person, it's not a 1, 2, 3 straightforward thing. There is a whole process to get this stuff set up. Now, once it's set up, it can be very simple to use for clients, and it's easy to add things once everything's set up. I think our biggest value when we do setups is getting their system set up. And I've had clients that after we get them set up, they add light switches on their own because they forgot about a door that they wanted a light switch on. So that's important. Also, some things to take into consideration is to have a good Wi-Fi signal. So a lot of times we are providing repeaters to make sure the whole home is covered very well with Wi-Fi. If someone's using video, you do need to have fast internet speeds. We're going to talk about if you don't have internet, what your options are, if we get to that, if we have time. Maximize what you already have. What's happening now, a lot of times when I go to do evals, people already have devices that can be controlled. So if they may have purchased a home that had a smart thermostat, but they never utilized the smart features of it. Why replace that? Just use what they have. So I think you would be surprised, most people that are in this presentation, if you really thought about it, there's probably a device that you already own that you could make smart very easily. Passwords. So this has kind of become the bane of our existence, is usernames and passwords. So it's actually gotten to the point where we set up accounts. We do not use their accounts except for very limited things. For if they have Prime, then we do have to use their Amazon account. But everything else, we try to set up the passwords ahead of time because people get very overwhelmed with all the accounts and passwords. And really focusing on what the most important items are. Can you control every single thing that's electrical in your house? Yes, but that's not practical. So really focusing on those top things, because you're going to see different systems work with different items. So finding the items that are really the most important and then kind of working around that. So I'm gonna kind of tell you how kind of our go-to system, just to save you the time of figuring this out. Now, you may end up coming out with a different conclusion, but I thought this would be at least a good place to start. So we do use Alexa for our home automation setups. We also like to use the SmartThings hub. So it used to be, so SmartThings was their own company. They were then purchased by Samsung, and Samsung was making the hubs for a while, but now this company AOTech, which makes a bunch of other home automation stuff, they now make a hub that is compatible with SmartThings. So that's what we use. And I'll kind of explain why we do in a second. It does have a mobile app, and you can also access it through Windows through a program called the Home Remote. And you'll see that it has a lot of compatibility. So some people would question why using a hub when you can connect directly to Alexa for most things. So we have found it to be useful to have a smart home hub for a couple reasons. One is if the client gets a new internet provider and a new router, all the information is stored in the hub. So they just have to plug it into their new router and they are good to go. It also allows for remote access. So it's pretty easy. If clients are having trouble, I will often log into their account with their permission, and I can see kind of what's going on and diagnose things. And then also by default, because anyone who is given permission can log into their app, a caregiver can utilize the equipment as well. And it's just a little bit more what I'm calling transparent. So the Alexa app, again, it's trying to be as user-friendly as possible, but for the techie stuff, sometimes it's not clear why there's a problem. So I feel like the Smart Home Hub, the SmartThings Hub gives us a little bit more transparency there. The con is it is another purchase, another piece of equipment to buy, and the device that you're controlling may or may not be compatible. So really, SmartThings will take care of the portal for most of our home automation. And it almost is an app that will allow you to access all of your stuff. And we don't tend to customize the app that much, but you can customize the app where you have different rooms. So you can make the interface, simpler, or organize things in a way that makes sense. So it's been a really good go-to solution for us. Here's just a picture of all of the devices that work with SmartThings. So it really has become a protocol, or not protocol, but a system that a lot of companies will make it work with. So that has been a good solution for us. The one thing that we can't do with SmartThings is TV control. So up until recently, our go-to was Logitech Harmony. This hardware has been discontinued, so I've been scrambling trying to find a solution. The Fire TV Cube is a good option for a lot of people. It is almost hands-free voice control. You got to be careful with these whiz-bang videos, because they will say voice control, but what they mean is the voice remote, where you have to push the button on the remote to activate the voice control. But with the Fire TV Cube, you actually can operate your TV. The setup is super easy. It literally is step-by-step. They take you through it. So most consumers will be able to handle it on their own. It does connect to the TV via HDMI, so you need an open HDMI input. You cannot make any sort of customization. So if you have a weirdo setup, this is not going to work. Some other things that people may not realize, you can actually view the video from a Ring doorbell on your television with the Fire Cube, which is kind of cool. And if you add a webcam, your TV becomes a two-way video conferencing, which is kind of cool. And I just uploaded the handouts this morning, but I do have a link that just has some basic information about the Fire Cube. Another product, I have played with it, I do not know it intimately, is the Broadlink. I had used it a while ago, but they have made some updates now where you can learn infrared and radio frequency signals and get voice control over them. You can provide button level control. So like you could give someone control over every single button on the remote. It's a lot of steps to make that happen, but it's technically possible. The app is not very user friendly, but So right now, I played around with it. I'm not gonna say I know it intimately. There is another product, I don't have it on this presentation, but that is not commercially available yet. That could be a better replacement for Logitech, but that product is being released sometime this year. So we'll see how that goes. If you're looking to buy a new TV, you might wanna, or if a client asks you, what TV should I get? I would recommend the Roku TV, mainly because their remote control is very simple. So you can see the picture, it's very few buttons. So even if you want to program and give someone control over all those buttons, it's relatively straightforward to do. The Roku televisions do use infrared. So if someone's using a communication device, you can program in the infrared controls. So just throwing that out there. So we also tend to go towards Z-Wave or Zigbee for our light switches. There's many different manufacturers that work with SmartThings, so pretty much almost any Z-Wave or Zigbee device will work with SmartThings. And once it's paired with SmartThings, then it's accessed via Alexa. Okay. So with smart light switches, you do need a neutral. There are some new light switches that have recently come out that do not require a neutral wire. If you have an older home, that may not be available, or we've even been in brand new homes that are just not wired correctly and they don't have a neutral wire. So another option is this product, the Third Reality Switch, and it's basically a box that goes over the light switch that flips the switch for you. And that is another way to access light switches. And I actually have a bunch of these in my house. Maybe I'm just kind of weird, but it makes this very satisfying click. So when you say the command and something clicks, I don't know, I just find it very satisfying. We do the Ring doorbell. Just to know, their Windows app was recently discontinued. So if someone needs to access their equipment on Windows, that's no longer possible. Another option would be the Arlo cameras. It is owned by Amazon, so the integration there is a little bit better. It can be used with Google Home, but not quite as much functionality. We kind of defaulted to the Ecobee thermostat. Again, it has a little bit more open and is more compatible with, it's compatible with all the stuff that we're using. And for locks, we default to Schlage. There's kind of no reason for that. It's just, once you get familiar with the product, and it works, you kind of learn all the ins and outs of it. And they do have Z-Wave, Zigbee, and Wi-Fi options that can be paired with SmartThings. So I know we have some questions, if we want to take a look at the questions before I go on to the next section.
Yeah, there have been a few questions in the chat. The first one is about the Matter protocol, and the question was about the ease of use in the future.
I have no idea, because it's like basically brand new. I mean, the idea is that if something has Matter, that they would be compatible across platforms.
There was also a question about when would you recommend a hardwired system versus a non-wired system? You may have answered this, but.
So are we wired for what?
I think this is when you were talking about the legacy systems, that this question came up.
Okay.
Probably they're all non-wired now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure when you say wired, I don't know what that means, but
if the person who asked that question wants to unmute, feel free. I'm not doing it justice. There was another question about Alexa, and if there was some way to control it with a sip and puff device when voice is not an option.
So if voice is not an option, then you're not going to use, well, not that you couldn't use Alexa, but you wouldn't be using the voice commands, but you can actually access your smart home equipment through the Alexa app. You cannot access the Alexa stuff through the computer. There is another way. I'm going to talk about the computer thing in a second. So you would want to give that person access to a mobile device, iPad, Android, tablet, and with the access to the mobile device, they would then be able to access their smart home stuff that way.
And Daniel Vance, he was commenting on this as well. And you know, Daniel, do you want to chime in? Okay, well, everyone can see the response in the chat. The final question I had here was a question about if you ever utilize Apple TV or Tekla. I don't know if I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
For control with head array users specifically.
Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. So for yes, that is an option. I'm trying to think. It's been a while since I've done that. A lot of times we are utilizing what the client already has. So you know, I'm working with whatever system they currently have. I am familiar with Tekla. Their app has some really cool things. Again, that's a little bit outside the purview of this particular presentation, but it's definitely something worth looking into. Apple TV has some really awesome accessibility features in it that can be accessed well. So again, it just, when I'm walking into someone's house, unless they are, you know, all Apple all the time, this is more of what we're going towards, but that equipment is accessible as well.
And I'll just go back to Daniel. Daniel, you can unmute now. We enabled it for you.
There it is. Yeah, sorry. I was just mentioning, and I'm sure Antoinette's going to go into this.
We can hear you, but it's very soft.
Interesting. Let's see if I can fix that. How about now?
Oh, much better.
Oh, great. Yeah, and I'm sure Antoinette's going to go into this, but I was just saying that oftentimes if someone doesn't have voice access, they can use their communication device, as Antoinette said, either to access the phone, or you can build a custom page set of all of those voice commands and use those voice commands as a way of interacting with the system. There's also then there's a newer company called Novolte out of Canada that's building some custom switch interfaces for home automation. I'm not sure if I've seen anything in the US yet, but they've sent me some of their demo products. And again, it builds a custom home automation setup. And then there's a switch interface that you can control. So there's a couple other options as well.
Okay, thanks. If you can type the name of that company in the chat, because that's a new one on me, that would be helpful. Yeah, I mean, again, you know, we could talk for 12 hours about this stuff. Yeah, I did mention about someone who has a progressive disability. In general, right now, most of the devices are Windows. There is an iOS option, but you know, if you're talking about someone who is using a communication device, an AAC device has some home automation stuff built into it where you should utilize that functionality. So if you've never set up an Alexa device ever, and you've never seen the app, I just wanted to kind of talk about their system just for half a second. So the concept is a smart speaker, and it gets paired to the Alexa app. And I will say the Alexa app has come a long way, and it has some really cool features on it that you may or may not have seen before. So the idea is, so you can see this is kind of an example where you can play music, there's communication where you can make phone calls and stuff. And then you can have lists and all kinds of things. Again, I could spend 4 hours just telling you everything that's available with the Alexa app. But the thing to understand is that once you have equipment, unless it's native to the app, you then pair a skill. So let's use SmartThings as an example. We have a SmartThings hub. We set up the SmartThings hub. We use their SmartThings app to set everything up. To add the voice control, so I say, you know, SmartThings is your brain, and then Alexa is kind of like the voice candy coating on top of it. So once we set up everything in SmartThings, we pair it with Alexa, and then that allows you to use the voice control. And like I said, the Alexa app has gotten really fancy, and I'm just showing you an example. There's a million different apps, or I'm sorry, they're called skills. So think of the skills like an app for Alexa, and things like Ask My Buddy, Find My Phone, Ecobee has an app. I mean, I personally there's a question of the day, so I can ask Alexa every day, ask me the question of the day. So there's all kinds of different apps, not just for home automation stuff, or I'm sorry, skills that are not just for home automation. I'm just going to mention this, and then, again, you can look into this more, ask me questions about it. If someone needs to access their home automation through a Windows computer, there is a program called the Home Remote that aggregates a bunch of smart home devices, and it puts everything in one place. So this is just kind of a screenshot of the stuff that it works with, but you can go on their website. So if someone needs to access through a Windows device, you'd want to look at this list to make sure that whatever you're using is accessible through that portal. There is an Alexa app for Windows, and you can control things through the app, but it's not customizable in any way, where the Home Remote is customizable. You can actually put things in rooms and make the interface easier to access. Typically, that would be an eye gaze user, so using the Alexa app can be hard because you have to scroll, and it makes it hard. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about considerations for elderly and also just people who have some cognitive deficits. I wanted to just throw out some ideas and some features. The two-way video calling can be really, really helpful if you're needing to support someone who's elderly. Through Alexa, there is a feature you can call the person. You can also do what's called drop in, and that is where so if I was wanting to call my elderly mother, I can drop in and she doesn't have to do anything. Now you have to allow that, but if that's allowed, then I can drop in on her and say, hey, how's it going, Mom? What you doing? Or you could call and then the person on the other end has the same answer. With the Fire TV Cube, if you add a webcam, like I said, you can make your TV be a huge video chat. So that could be a really nice thing. You live on one side of the country, your parents are on the other side, you want to check in, or for people with some cognitive deficits, being able to check in with them can be really helpful. You can create your own skill. I have the link here if you want to look into that. So you could actually make up your own things where if someone asks Alexa a question that you put in there, she'll give you answers. So that could be used for a gajillion things. Now, that is an option, but another thing that you can do is routines. And again, we could spend hours just talking about this, but there's a million different options for routines. So I'm showing you here, if you're in the Alexa app, if you go to the More button in the bottom right, and then you go to routines, you can build routines to do all kinds of things. So the one on the left would be a medication reminder. And there probably are skills specifically for medication reminders, but this is just a really simple thing where when it's 10 a.m. every day, Alexa will say, time to take your blue pill. Again, this is just a silly example, but you get the idea. You can also have, if you have someone who has some memory issues, maybe they keep asking the same question over and over again, let them ask Alexa, what's my daughter's name? And when you ask Alexa that, your daughter's name is Antoinette. And then another option, which, as I was fiddling with this, I actually discovered this. This is a new thing. If it detects coughing, you can get a notification to say, hey, Mom's coughing. I mean, again, kind of silly, but if you get into here and start fiddling with it, you'll see there's so many possibilities. Alexa has a feature called Guard, which is kind of a real basic level security thing. Now, there are some products you can purchase that make this more robust, but just with your Alexa speaker, it can detect smoke and CO alarms as well as glass breaks. So that's something that could be useful if you're supporting someone who's away from home. Now, a relatively new thing that Alexa has put in place, it used to be called Care Hub. I did actually set it up with one of my relatives, and it wasn't great, but I think it's because they were getting ready to launch this. So Care Hub was a free feature, Alexa Together does have a fee. If I remember correctly, I looked it up last night. It's I think $20 a month or $200 a year, and it has it's really set up so you could do some of these things with the blueprints and the routines, but Alexa Together is their system specifically for supporting elderly or kind of people who have some kind of deficit. So that's something to investigate a little bit further. So now I want to, so it looks like, yeah, I'm looking at the chat real quick, and people are saying that Google Home has routines as well. So yeah, they have, again, they're going to have similar features. Now let's just talk about for a minute if you don't have internet. So this could be a situation in a long-term care facility, or there are people who live in areas. I actually just visited a client yesterday that lives about 30 minutes south of San Antonio, and their internet is not great. So we can't really depend on it for things. So something that you may not be aware of, there are Amazon smart speakers that have Zigbee hubs built into them. If you need to know that information, I don't know the exact products off the top of my head, but the Amazon devices that have the Zigbee hub built into them, there is a feature called the offline voice control, where once the equipment is set up, you do need internet to set it up. But once it's set up, I'm saying wait 24 hours. I don't think it actually takes that long, but there is a period of time where it kind of needs to think through some stuff. But then once everything's set up, the voice commands for those Zigbee items are actually stored locally on the device, and it does not need internet to operate. So that is one way to do offline. Another way is there's a product called the Almond Hub. It is a Wi-Fi and smart home hub, and you can connect multiple devices, and also you could have multiple hubs to create a Wi-Fi, a mesh Wi-Fi network. It doesn't have as wide of device capability as something like SmartThings, but it does have local control. So this is what the hub actually looks like. You can add devices straight through this touchscreen. You don't have to go through an app. I mean, you can, but I like that you can just set up your devices straight through the hub. Itself, this is actually a touchscreen on the product. And once you set up your equipment, it can be operated via a mobile app or a computer portal offline. So the device itself is sending out a Wi-Fi signal. You would need to connect your app, your mobile device or computer to the Almond's Wi-Fi signal. But even if you don't have internet, you can operate your smart home products. Now, Almond can also be paired to Alexa, where you can have voice control, but you would not have voice control if you don't have internet. So this could be maybe an option for someone who lives in an area that maybe their internet's not consistent. You can do both local and cloud control. It does do Zigbee and Z-Wave devices. So that's another option if you don't have good internet. So just kind of to wrap this up and to kind of go over what we talked about. If you're looking to help someone, you need to start with the list of things you want to control. And again, that's really spending some time with the client to really figure out what their biggest priorities are, and maybe whittling that down to like the top 2 or 3 things. These are the things I must have control over. If these other things can't work with that system, okay, fine. Finding out what their technology savviness is and their cognitive load that they can handle. I have clients that we're IT professionals, so this is like no big deal to them. Other clients, they really get overwhelmed even with setting up a couple of accounts. They just get very overwhelmed. So you want to kind of feel that out. The access method obviously has to be considered. And then that starts to whittle down your options and kind of helps focus you on what equipment is going to be the best fit for what you're trying to do. And then obviously the budget is important. So maybe you start with the top most important thing and then say, okay, next month we're going to add this, and next month we're going to add that. You'd be surprised, you buy 1 device a month, now you have 12 devices that you have control over. With regards to funding, home automation is not typically, or as far as I know, is not covered by medical insurance because it's not medically necessary. A couple entities to look into would be vocational rehab. Now, anything that they purchase would have to be related to vocation, but that could include getting ready for work, getting in and out the house. We've had vocational rehab fund, those kinds of things. The Veterans Administration does fund environmental controls, workman's comp, and then private pay. Like I said, we're in this new world where for less, I'm saying less than 500, depends on what you want to do, but for less than $500, you can get someone started. And then, okay, we're going to do, a smart speaker in 2 rooms and a couple light switches. You could start with that, and then we're going to add things as our budget allows. If this is an area you're interested in, I just have some places that you can go to find more information. Actually, the best way to do it is to purchase this equipment and use it yourself. That's how you really become an expert on how all this stuff works. That's how I became comfortable with it. So most of the stuff that we use for clients, I have in my own home. That way I really know these products in and out and can make sure that they're going to work well for them. This podcast, Stacy on IoT, she talks about home automation as well as industrial automation. It's a really great podcast. I've learned a lot. That's how I've learned about all this Matter stuff, and they really are staying on top of the industry. Obviously, conferences, RESNA, ATIA, Closing the Gap, CSUN, ISS, those are kind of the big AT conferences. Actually, a new thing, I would say in the last year, I've really been participating in Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups, and that's been a place, getting on manufacturers' pages and getting news from them. That's how I'm learning about new products that are coming out. And then professional groups when you have questions. I would be remiss if I did not mention the AT forum through RESNA. You do not have to be a RESNA member to be on the AT forum. It used to be a very, very, very active group. I would say less so when they made the change to their new interface there, but I would recommend, it's a good place to post questions. And then again, this presentation is part of the RESNA track. Our conference is coming up in July, and I have the link there if you have if you want to get some more information. It is going to be virtual this year. That they made that decision a couple months ago, and so if you're interested in focusing more on assistive technology, that would be a great conference to attend. All right, so I'm looking at the chat to see, and if anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you. Thanks, Daniel, for putting that link in there. I'm going to write that down myself. NOVLT. So let's see. Oops. The CEU code is posted in the chat for anyone who needs that. So I'd be curious, I kind of said what my go-to system is. If someone has another specific product or something that they found very useful, I'd love to hear about that. So someone said, I work in a facility, Alexa and Google are not compliant without another platform. Yes. So yeah, I'm talking mainly for homes. When you start talking about facility, environmental control, that's a whole different animal. One option, so Daniel kind of mentioned it quickly, but let me kind of flesh that out a little bit. So if you're using a communication device for AAC, or this could be actually applicable in a facility, it is a closed system. So depending on the device you're using, most AAC devices have infrared built in, so that would operate things like the television. There is software that can be used for the computer for voice control that would give you access to the computer. One option is Grid 3 is a software program that has voice control baked into it. So you could have a grid, I'm just coming up with examples, light switch 1, light switch 2, and once you set up the voice control, it's not connected to, it does not need to be connected to the internet. You can say light switch 1, and that presses the button and you can activate it. I'm probably not doing a good job of explaining that, but just to know that there are some ways to do it that does not require the internet and the privacy concerns that sometimes come up when you're dealing with facilities. So someone put in a comment, they have a lock. Oh yes, letting in the home health aides. So that's another benefit, where you can also know if someone's going in and out of the house with like motion detectors and stuff. I know I personally have a Schlage lock, and it has a keypad built into it. So I actually don't even know where the key to my front door is. Like a couple months ago, I'm like, wait, I don't even know. And I actually looked for it and I couldn't find it. So I haven't used a key for my front door in 7 years. I think it's one of those things, once you have it, you kind of wonder how you lived without it. So that, and you can have multiple codes. So you can have codes just for visitors. Someone asked about Home Assistant. I am aware Home Assistant is a home automation system, kind of like SmartThings. It's made a little bit more for the DIY techie kind of things, and you can do some fancier stuff than what you can do with SmartThings. I have not gone down that route myself. I've dipped my toe and gone on their website and kind of looked at what it is, but I just haven't had time to really go into it. But it is a very popular system for the more DIY techie people that want to do. And I believe Home Assistant does a lot of things local. So if you're not wanting to put things on the internet, it does have some options to do that. So it looks like we have about 5 more minutes. So if anyone else has questions, again, if you want to raise your hand and ask in person, happy to take that call.
Dawn was wanting some clarification about the sip and puff question from before. Maybe we glossed over that, whether or not you can, is there some way to use a sip and puff to control your phone?
So yes, I mean, that is alternate access to your cell phone. So there's a couple different products that would give you that. You can, if someone's up in their wheelchair, you could use their wheelchair controls. I can for sure tell you with Permobile and Quantum, I'm sure Invacare as well, you can pair your wheelchair to your phone, where the wheelchair controls can also become the controls for your cell phone. So once you have access to your cell phone that way, then you can access it. The issue would be when someone's not in their wheelchair. So that's where something like the Tekla, used to be called the Tekla Shield, what's it called now? The name of the product is escaping me, but it's Tekla I'm going to write it in here. It's TECLA. If you search
Tekla E.
Tekla E.
Yeah.
So it's TECLA-E is the product, and that is a wireless device that can provide switch control, which would include sip and puff. And you can actually control multiple devices with it. So for those Apple people, it's a really nice setup. If you can switch between your phone, an iPad, Apple TV, and all with one system. So it is a nifty system. And their app has some really cool stuff. You might even want to check out their app. If you don't have the hardware, their app has some shortcuts and things that can make someone who's accessing their phone in an alternate way actually simpler to do. So you can check out their app even if you don't have the hardware. It may have some applications that could be helpful. So I have my contact information here. Feel free to reach out if you have questions. I know a lot of y'all probably aren't in this aspect of AT all day, every day, but for good or bad, I am. So I'm happy to give my opinion.
All right, thank you very much, Antoinette. For those of you who might not have seen the CEU code in the chat, it's ZEQ54W. ZEQ54W. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone.
Thank you.